Welcome to the Astro Psyche. This is your weekly astrology forecast for December 9th through the 15th. This week involves a full moon in Gemini. Also, Mercury will be stationing direct, meaning that the Mercury retrograde process will come to a close this week. And we also have Venus and Pluto making a very important aspect with Mars. So we're going to talk about all of that astrology that's happening this week. My name is Shawna McGrath. I'm a depth psychotherapist and an astrologer, and I am so honored to share the astrology of this week with you from a depth psychological perspective. So let's first talk about the full moon in Gemini. So this week we're moving towards the culmination experience of this full moon in Gemini. It's happening on Sunday, the 15th of December. It's exact at 1:02 a.m. Pacific time at 23 degrees of Gemini. And so full moons are typically this time of culmination, of seeing, of things being illuminated. And often this correlates to a general sense of busyness or extroversion. Sometimes it can feel like there's a lot going on. Sometimes it can feel like there's a lot that is on your mind or that you're processing or experiencing. And we can think of the moon as a symbol of our emotions, our subconscious, our intuition, our needs, our wants, our desires, our experience of how it is that we attach and connect and feel an interdependence on other people, with other people, and with other things in our lives. And so I think we can also think of the moon as one of the most core indicators of where and how we experience a sense of soothing or regulation or stress. So like, how do we deal with stress? How do we feel soothed? And how do we connect with other people and have a sense of feeling like we can feel regulated, feel whole, and feel this sense of social connection. So I realize that's a lot with the moon. Like all the other planets, the moon holds a lot. And so there's this, the moon holds some of the most fast-paced cycles in the astrology. It's moving through each sign about every 2.5 days or so. It moves around the entire zodiac in about a month or so. And so the full moon is this point in that monthly cycle of culmination, of things becoming more apparent, things feeling more strong or more intense or more urgent. And in this case, this is around Gemini themes. So it's actually really, the full moon is always a polarity. It's always the moon opposite the sun. So in this case, it is the moon in Gemini opposite the sun in Sagittarius. So we're actually really working this polarity of Gemini and Sagittarius. And both of these signs are about ideas and communication and how we conceptualize something, how we think about things, how we believe and process information. So for Gemini, it's the more immediate and let's see what I want to say here, like the more micro experience of communication. So how we communicate thoughts and ideas moment to moment, how we have brief interactions that mean something to us. Gemini is very much about the transitions, the reviews, change, shifting from one thing to another quickly. And it's also about our mindset from moment to moment. So when we have a full moon in Gemini here, there is this awareness that is coming up, this illumination around how you experience your thoughts, how you process information, and especially how you process in your just day-to-day, everyday experience, moment to moment, and what that is like for you. Now, this full moon connects into several different planets. And it really connects in with Sagittarius even more so than we typically would think. So Sagittarius, in contrast to Mercury, or in contrast to Gemini, Sagittarius is about the big picture, the big perspective, thinking about what your philosophical approach to something is, why you do the things that you do, and how that informs the more day-to-day. Sagittarius is much more about your belief system and your sense of making meaning in the world. And this particular full moon connects more into Sagittarius because the moon in Gemini is with Jupiter in Gemini. Jupiter rules Sagittarius. So moon and Jupiter are together in the zodiac at this particular point in time. And this has an impact on this full moon. The impact is a Jupiterian influence that involves an emphasis around your hopes and wishes and dreams and your belief system. There's an expansiveness that Jupiter brings. There's an inclusion. There's a wanting to do more, wanting to experience more and be more and see more and have more. There's also this theme with Jupiter around ideals, morality, and the holding what you know to be true or what you believe to be true. Jupiter tends to have a more buoyant, optimistic, pleasant experience connected to it. And also we can sometimes experience it as overwhelm, or there's too much that's happening. The expansion happens more quickly than we can handle. And so I think, that's possible for this particular full moon. It might feel more uplifting and more exciting, and also there's a possibility for feeling overwhelmed. And so I think whenever we have moon Jupiter, it's always important to look at what your limits are, what your boundaries are, what feels good to you, and if it feels like you're overextending yourself, or if you're in a position where that's happening for whatever reason, how can you take care of yourself, leaning into the moon element of this. Now also with this full moon, we have Mercury in Sagittarius. So Mercury opposite the moon in Sagittarius with the sun. And Mercury is still retrograde for a bulk of this week. Mercury is actually stationing direct on Sunday the 15th, the same day as this full moon. So we're really emphasizing, the astrology is really emphasizing this Gemini Sagittarius axis here. And Mercury rules Gemini also. So that Mercury is connected into this particular full moon means that there's this emphasis, there's this highlighting around all of the things that you've been contemplating or reviewing or analyzing from November to now. And I think this week there's a potential for having some new ideas, having some new insights or awarenesses or things coming to light in a way where maybe something that you've been thinking about starts to gain some traction or starts to become more clear to you. Mercury retrograde has this quality to it that is more about contemplation and thinking and retooling and doing more of an introverted sort of process, a more introverted experience of the mind, of communication. And so I think that some of what you've been processing and thinking about this last month may become more clear to you. Like maybe you're like, Shawna, I don't know, I haven't been reviewing or rethinking anything. I don't know what this Mercury retrograde is about for me. If that's the case, then maybe this week things become more clear. And let's see, what else do I want to say about this? There's also this sort of like trickster quality to Mercury as well. And so I think that that gets infused into this particular full moon. And so the trickster quality is the playful, unexpected symbolism. And so I think that this week as well, when we're moving towards this full moon, we can think about how we can make space for that playful trickster energy. How can there be more of a sense of play with the optimism of Jupiter? And then, of course, we also have Saturn still in this equation as well, because we have the Jupiter-Saturn square. So I think Saturn brings in some of the more serious tone to it. And I think that Mercury's medicine here is bringing a sense of play and flexibility to what may feel like a bit of a tense aspect with Jupiter-Saturn. Now, another piece of this full moon as well is that it's connecting in with Chiron, and I think Chiron is another asset in addition to Mercury too, because Chiron is a symbol of healing and support and mentorship and care, and how we feel a sense of being able to be of service, to be a healing force, but also to receive healing as well, and to further our process of learning and growing and expanding. And so Chiron is making a helpful, more subtle sextile aspect to the moon, but it's also making a trine to the sun. And so I think here, especially the sun being connected to vitality and success and self-confidence, there's potential here for receiving support around a sense of healing, especially healing as it relates to confidence or your well-being, your sense of vitality, your sense of that, like the sun being the sense of the healthy ego here. So I think that this full moon in Gemini may be very illuminating. It kind of feels like there's a lot that's in transition, or a lot that's going on, because of it connecting so strongly into the Gemini-Sagittarius axis. And we're really talking about mutable energy here as well with Gemini and Sagittarius. And mutable energy being about, so mutable signs being about paradox and transition and thresholds, and being something as well as something else, and this and that. It's really a theme of allowing for multiplicity, allowing for contradiction, and finding a sense of being okay within the not knowing, or within the transitory space. Okay, so that's a big part of this week, and again, we're like really leading into the full moon energy over the course of the week. So there's this kind of build experience emotionally. And then I want to share with you a little bit about Mercury stationing retro, or stationing direct this week. So I don't know about you, but I feel like this Mercury retrograde has felt a little more fast than normal. I think it's because it's sort of coincided with the holiday seasons. And so Mercury stationed retrograde, the retrograde process began on November 25th. So from November 25th to December 15th, Mercury has been retrograde. And Mercury is a symbol of the mind, the thought process, how we make meaning. It's also a symbol of business and commerce and contracts and logistics, as well as, more metaphysically, it's connected with divination and symbolism and languages and translating things, and how we assign meaning to things, how we can communicate with something outside of the material, ordinary reality. So Mercury really holds a lot of symbolism, both the practical as well as the more metaphysical. And when we have Mercury retrograde, it is this period of introspection as far as the mind process. And I think that we could also think of Mercury as moving from the more practical day-to-day function when it's direct versus when it's retrograde. There's more of an inward focus, and there's maybe more of an emphasis around Mercury holding some of these more metaphysical traits related to your ability to have an intuitive understanding of something, or an experience of synchronicity, or an experience of connecting with the divine or with ancestors, or being able to understand something about yourself in a way that is maybe different than the rational mind can make sense of. So we're coming to a close this week with that process, that more introverted process. And this is also Mercury going from 22 degrees of Sagittarius to 6 degrees of Sagittarius. And so this is really emphasizing the sign in the zodiac, Sag, that is about our belief systems, our cultural context, and exposing ourselves to other cultural contexts, other ways of, other perspectives, and that really opening up the mind, allowing our mind and our lives to expand. And what I also want to say is, I think it's really interesting that this retrograde has tied so strongly into the Sagittarius Gemini axis. And I know I keep saying this, but there's so many different connections here. So Mercury's station retrograde on the 25th happened just before the new moon in Sagittarius on November 30th. So there's a lot of emphasis here around this part in the sky. And I think that this moment, this week, this period in time is a place to contemplate, okay, like what's come up for you since November? What has been percolating? What has been gestating? What have you been thinking about? What's been on your mind? And I think that there may be a sense of illumination, and then also more info to come as Mercury, once it's direct, continues to move through the rest of the sign of Sagittarius, and we close out the remaining portion of this lunar cycle that started with the new moon in Sagittarius. And I think that a lot of it may involve how you make meaning of things, what you, the storyline that you tell yourself. And this also is so much connecting into your experience of expansion and growth, Jupiter, and then the limitations or restrictions or devotions that are required of you, Saturn, because this is really connecting into the Jupiter-Saturn square that we've been experiencing all year long. And so I think there's a lot of potential for really understanding and processing where you're at, and maybe making meaning of things, maybe connecting some dots. And I think there's potential for understanding, contextualizing the past, and seeing a way forward. Now, let's see, what else do I want to say about this? Yeah, okay, so that feels complete. And I'm wondering, as I'm saying this, what's coming up for you? What are you thinking about in your life? And knowing that there's more that's going to be illuminated as time goes on. Okay, so another piece of what's happening this week is we have Venus and Pluto together, still pretty close together in Aquarius. Venus is going to be opposite Mars this week. And Mars is also retrograde. So Mars just recently stationed retrograde in Leo. Mars moves slower, so it's going to be retrograde for a longer period of time until February. And this feels like a very vibrant astrological signature to me. So Venus is about relationships, love, beauty, aesthetics, pleasure, enjoyment, sexuality, sensuality, our experience of the feminine or femininity or maternal type figures. These are all Venus themes. I think Venus can also connect into psychologically our sense of values and self-worth and how we assign value to different things. And then Mars is a symbol of our enthusiasm for action, our physicality, assertiveness, courage, fear, directness, boundaries, saying no, and of course anger and agitation and how we experience those phenomenons. So this together, there's a lot of vibrancy in this just alone looking at Venus and Mars. And I think that there's themes here around passion, enthusiasm, and then also with Pluto connecting in here. Pluto is a symbol of the unconscious, the taboo, the rejected, the unseen, the marginalized, the secret, the mysterious. Pluto we can think of as sort of like a reservoir for all of the things that we either consciously or unconsciously reject or tuck away for whatever reason, the things that are unacceptable, and the things also that are mysterious and unknown and are just sort of not known, not because they're rejected, but just because there's an unknownness about them. And so already, when we had Venus move into Aquarius the last week or so, there's already this experience of relational phenomena, experiences of the feminine, Venus, connecting into Pluto. And I think we could see Venus-Pluto as bringing some healing and some repair, Venus, to the unseen, to the rejected, to the marginalized. And this may look like having some healing experiences around parts of yourself that have been unknown or rejected or unconscious in some way, or maybe relational dynamics that have come up. So the thing with Pluto is that whatever it is that is unconscious is seen first, and then there's a sense of integration. So usually seeing whatever it is that's Plutonian unconscious usually feels pretty uncomfortable because bringing unconsciousness into consciousness is not always a pleasant thing. We're usually like mortified or embarrassed or feel shame or guilt in some way. And I think this is very natural and normal. And so what's really lovely here is that Venus comes in with a soothing effect. And Venus also may indicate that there's there's a relational phenomenon to what is unconscious that's being brought up to see the light. Now with Mars coming into the equation here, and we've actually been, Mars, Pluto is not new. We've been experiencing that as Mars in Cancer was opposite Pluto in Capricorn. So we're sort of returning to this energy. And Mars is more about our sense of protection, advocation, anger, agitation. And I think that Pluto exposing this exposes where there is a sense of vitality, a sense of fight, a sense of anger or boundaries that want to be exposed. And so there's kind of this like, I always think of Mars energy as sort of, there can be like an adolescent kind of like angstiness to it. And so I think that might be a little bit of the feeling tone here with this particular aspect. So I think that there can be like a sense of feeling energized in relationships, a sense of authentic, vulnerable, deep connection, especially with the Venus-Pluto. And I think that we can connect in with this by experiencing this deep connection and vulnerability in safe spaces. That feels really crucial. That is where the healing happens, when there is emotional safety. There is the safety to be yourself, to express something where it feels like you will be accepted or understood, or that you will be met, that you will be seen as a human. And so I think also too, this could be maybe confronting or experiencing situations around self-confidence or self-esteem, around sexuality, around how you experience attraction and relationships, and how you feel like that's more the Venus, but then the Mars, like how you feel alive and active and present in your life, like how you feel like an active participant in your life. That feels very Mars Pluto. And then we also have Mercury making a sextile to Venus Pluto here too, so that feels like Mercury is just bringing a little more support and insight, information, messages, maybe even in this sort of like trickster kind of way. So so these are some of the themes. I think that when we're talking about Venus Pluto and Venus Mars and Mars Pluto, all of those combinations can sometimes feel like there's a harshness to them, or like there's something that's a little bit challenging or scary. And I think that there can certainly be a challenging component to it. And the more that we can look for places for that planetary energy to express itself, that's going to give it an outlet, and it usually helps us feel like there's a more empowering experience of this. And so I think with Venus, especially Venus Pluto, this is like seeking out a sense of like inquiry around what it is that's happening in your relationships, how you're showing up in relationship. If there's something that feels really emotionally activating, like wondering what might be going on there, what kind of themes are happening, and what it may be communicating about you and your needs and your experiences in relationship. And then with the Mars piece, I think always with Mars, we can find an outlet via physical activity. That's like a very simple Mars remediation, is to find more physical movement or activity in your life. But I think more psychologically, more subtly too, we can look at where we're having experiences of agitation or anger and what that means, because anger and agitation is not bad. It's actually a very healthy protective mechanism in our psyche. And of course, it's not pleasant to experience all the time, but usually, especially if it's simply agitation, it's usually telling us something about maybe a place where we want to say no, or we want to have a boundary, or there's a conflict, like we want this but we also want this, and then they conflict with one another, and so we can start to pull and piece apart those things. My point in sharing this with you is that I think it's so important to look at the astrology and what's happening and what we find is simultaneously being invoked, like what the correlations are there, and then how, like, what does that mean? And to use it as a process of inquiry as to what might be going on underneath the surface here. I think especially, like always, ideally we want to be doing that, but especially so when there are transits that seem like at first blush they might be more challenging. And so along with that, I'm really excited to be offering a workshop on challenging astrology, and especially how when we look at astrology from a depth psychological perspective, then that can open up more space for healing and possibility. And so I'm actually hosting that or leading that this week on Friday, December 13th at 7 o'clock in the evening Pacific time. It's being graciously hosted by the San Diego Astrological Society, and I'm leading this in person in San Diego as well as online. So would love to see you if you're in town. Would love to have you there on the Zoom space. I'll have info on that where you can register on my website, theastropsyche.com. And yeah, I think it's so important for us to do these kinds of things where in this workshop, we're going to be looking at your chart examples. So anyone who attends will be able to volunteer, and we can look at your natal chart, your transits, and have a real-time discussion about, like, okay, what's going on in, like, what is the challenging situation? What is the astrology? And then how can we start to look at this from a depth psychological perspective to open up more possibility. Okay, so that's the astrology for this week. Let's pull some tarot cards for you. So now is a perfect time to get into any space or way of being that feels like you can turn your attention inward towards your own experience. And so that may involve being still, that may involve movement, that may involve closing your eyes, it may involve focusing on an object in front of you, it may involve connecting in with your breath, or focusing on the sounds that are happening around you. And wherever you're at, whatever you're doing, you can imagine that you're in this beautiful, protective bubble of light. And in this space, you can invite in your spiritual guidance team, ancestors, whatever your experience is of a benevolent guiding force. And then from this place, there's an inquiry or a question or a situation that arises. And just softly hold that in your awareness. Okay. If you like, you may also pick a card between 1 and 3 for that card to be special to you. And I'm using the Wild Unknown deck by Kim Krans today. Okay, so first card is the Hanged Person. Gosh, this image is really striking. So typically there's a person hanging upside down with a expression that looks very serene. In this card, there's a bat with these like super striking red eyes, and it's hanging upside down, and it's got its wings wrapped around it. So this card, the Hanged Person, typically is about inaction, about contemplation, about gaining an alternate perspective. And actually, like the essence of the Hanged Person is gaining an exact opposite perspective. So there's something here around around inaction, around not doing, around pausing, and around flipping your perspective. So this feels really connected into the polarity of the full moon and to the Mercury retrograde process, actually, because it is like a reversal. And so I think this week it's emphasizing that there's something here that's continuing to be contemplated, and there's an emphasis around, sitting with versus trying to do or take action. Like this card is in contrast to, something like the Chariot or the Eight of Wands, or a more like action-oriented card. This card is more about existing and contemplating and looking at things from a different vantage point. The second card is the Two of Pentacles. So, and I pulled this card reversed. So this card has a really big, beautiful butterfly on it with an infinity symbol on its body and two pentacles in each of the infinity symbol places. So, Two of Pentacles also feels very like in between contemplation. Two of Pentacles tends to be about balancing, about like juggling things. Sometimes I feel like this card, there's kind of a sense of like anxiety about it. Like there's kind of like a feeling of unsettledness. And that I pulled this reversed in the middle position. There's kind of like, there's something here that's in question. There's something like that. This is a butterfly, actually. There's something uncertain about what is coming out of the cocoon, and that there's like a double, there's a doubleness about it. There's like a paradox about it. And yeah, like what are you deciding? What are you juggling? What are the things that are sort of like moving back and forth in your psyche? And then the third card is the Father of Pentacles, also known as the King of Pentacles. And in this deck, it's this deer with horns, with rainbow colored horns. And in between the horns, there's this pentacle that looks like it's almost like this like starburst kind of energy from the pentacle. So the kings are typically a symbol of having an impact, having an influence, being in a leadership role, being in a role where you're seen in some way, having influence. And the pentacles are the suit of the material world, finances, responsibilities, work, like all of the more practical things. And so we have two pentacles. We have the Two of Pentacles, and then we have the King of Pentacles here. And I pulled this reversed as well. So as I'm looking at this, so there's something here around with the King of Pentacles around authority, responsibility, being responsible for resources, and wanting to be like a good, responsible steward of your responsibilities. King of Pentacles feels very Saturnian to me in some ways. And And so as I'm looking at this, it's like there's a contemplation here. There's a pause moment, which feels very much Mercury stationing also. And then there's like there's some juggling that may happen this week. And then from that juggling or deciding or contemplation or holding of multiplicity, there's a sense of confidence, there's a sense of impact or influence that emerges. I really feel like there is something kind of uncertain that's kind of like the beginning vibe of this week. There's an uncertainty, there's a questioning, there's also actually the bat is shaped like almost like a cocoon, like a butterfly cocoon kind of shape, and then we have the butterfly. So maybe, possibly, there's something that is in the cocoon, and it's like ready to come out. It's like peeking out of the cocoon. There's like you're at like the final stages of this little cocoon situation, and then the butterfly, whatever it is that's been gestating, is ready to emerge. That's happening now. It's reversed, so we don't quite know like what's going on with that, what it's going to look like. And then from that, there's a sense of maturity, there's a sense of confidence, there's a sense of sitting in your power and your autonomy that comes. And even like with the antlers and the way the pentacle is on this deer, like I really feel the sense of knowing and insight, like connecting into the wisdom of the third eye energy center and the connection to the divine and the sense of knowing via the crown energy center. So I feel like this very empowering theme this week, and I think that the practice is around like letting the cocoon gestation process run its course, like not trying to like expedite that. Like it is happening. It's like you are emerging. You're not gonna be in there forever. You will eventually, or whatever it is, like we can think of it as like you are emerging as the butterfly and the deer. We could also think of it as there is a quality within you represented by the butterfly and the deer that is emerging. And yeah, it's going to happen. You don't need to do anything. Like what's being highlighted here by the tarot is an encouragement to be with the process. Super cool. Very excited for you. This is your astrology forecast for the week. Such an honor to share this with you. As always, I love hearing how you're doing and reading your comments. Thank you so much for sharing with me. I will have my website below where you can check out the workshop that I'm hosting. Would absolutely love to have you there. I'm so excited to talk about this topic and to share it with you. And I am wishing you a lovely week. I'll see you soon. Bye.